Interpreting Saturn in the fourth house revolves around three key themes: happiness, satisfaction, and simplicity. If Saturn is positive in the fourth house, it indicates happiness in the sense of being very resistant to causes of sadness. Conversely, if Saturn is negative in the fourth house, it indicates the converse. You're difficult to encourage, you're difficult to console, you're difficult to cheer up. If Saturn's positive in the fourth house, then it signifies having minimal needs. You can be content without needing that many props. But if the converse is true and Saturn is negative in the fourth house, then the converse is the interpretation. So you do need a lot of props before you feel satisfied, which makes it easy to displease you or difficult to please you. Finally, if Saturn is positive in the fourth house, it indicates a person who's very simple. And again, if the converse is the case and Saturn is negative in the fourth house, then the interpretation is converse. You're not simple at all, really. You have a lot of needs, and those needs are not easy to meet. So like I said, when you interpret Saturn in the fourth house, you deal with these three themes: happiness, satisfaction, and simplicity. And then depending on how positive Saturn is in the fourth house, that's how much you skew your interpretation towards the positive versions. Conversely, the more negative Saturn is in the fourth house, that's how much you stress the negative possibilities of the interpretation. So I will explain how to figure that out at the end of this video. And also, if you're not the mathematical type, I figure it out for you in the reports that I offer. So if you want, you can go to my website, victicara.com, and order one of my reports, and it will tell you exactly how positive or negative, and therefore how much stress to put on either the positive or the negative traits. Let's look at these traits of positive and negative Saturn in the fourth house in a little more detail. On the theme of happiness, if Saturn's positive in the fourth house, you're happy usually. The reason is that it's difficult for you to get sad. Maybe you're old, but that doesn't make you sad. Maybe you're not that rich, but that doesn't make you sad. It doesn't take a lot of damage from the negative events. It's resistant against the negative events. For example, the traditional chart for Sri Ram has Saturn in the fourth house exalted in Libra. Think of all the difficult events that happen in the life of Rama. But does Rama ever getting grumpy or stressed out or sad? Hardly. Now let's look at the converse of this. If Saturn is negative, or the more that Saturn is negative, because it's not really a question of if a planet is positive or negative, it's the spectrum between those two polarities. So depending on how negative Saturn is, the less you have resilience to sadness, and the more you have resistance to happiness. See the polarity? So basically that means it's difficult to cheer you up. When you get sad, you stay sad. And it's, maybe somebody does something nice for you, but it doesn't make a difference. You still feel sad. Maybe you won the game, but it doesn't make a difference. You still feel sad. Maybe you're really pretty, but it doesn't make a difference. You still feel sad. Maybe you're really rich, but it doesn't make a difference. You still feel sad. So an example of this is Marilyn Monroe. Saturn is in the fourth house, Scorpio with Mars far enough away to make it pretty negative. Now let's turn to the slightly different angle on this whole interpretation, which is not necessarily happiness per se, but satisfaction. The more Saturn is positive in the fourth house, the less stuff you need. Like this kid here, he doesn't have that much stuff, but he still feels fine. A positive Saturn in the fourth house doesn't give a very materialistic outlook on life. It doesn't give that much interest in pursuing things and trying to, acquire things, because it feels like it's got enough. It's fine. I already have enough. I'm happy. A great example of this is Sri Chaitanya. This chart has Saturn in the fourth house and Sagittarius with Jupiter nearby. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a famous sannyasi, a famous renunciate. Somebody that really is not materialistic at all, because they already feel like they have more than enough stuff. So the more positive Saturn is in the fourth house, the more simple your needs. And the more negative Saturn is in the fourth house, the more demanding your needs are. You're not satisfied unless things are really quite exactly the way you want them to be, and you want a lot. So a way of expressing this is it's easy to disappoint you, or you're easily saddened. You're not easily satisfied. You're easily dissatisfied. A great example of this is Ernest Hemingway. Saturn in the fourth house in Sagittarius, but with Rahu. And the third theme to interpret with Saturn in the fourth house is simplicity. The more positive Saturn is here in the fourth, the more simple you are. Positive Saturn in the fourth house really will like things that are simple, clean, basic, minimalistic. So for example, Hermann Hesse, Saturn in the fourth house, Pisces, with Jupiter in the first in its own sign. Hermann Hesse, of course, was very, very into those like Buddhist and Eastern minimalistic philosophies. Conversely, the more negative Saturn is in the fourth house, the more you're not simple. You don't like things that are just basic. You like things that are fancy. And you kind of need things that are fancy. You expect or need or require kind of a demanding or high level of comfort and amenity. And of course, it's not easy to get those. See, the advantageous part of having a positive Saturn in the fourth is that the stuff that you like is the stuff that's easy to get. The disadvantageous stuff of having a negative Saturn in the fourth is the stuff that you like is not easy to get. So you often fail to get it. So you often feel dissatisfied because of that. The one example of negative Saturn in the fourth house is, we could use Marilyn Monroe as a great example of this. She has all kinds of riches, all kinds of fame, all kinds of fancy stuff if she wants, but it's never really consoling her. It's never really satisfying her. She's never feeling like it's quite enough. Another example would be Gwyneth Paltrow. And in Paltrow's case, it's not exactly like a very negative Saturn in the fourth house. It's just a mildly negative Saturn in the fourth house, being the 12th lord and having a subpar dignity. So with Gwyneth Paltrow, you find somebody that really has this huge need for wealth and, ridiculously lavish things. But because it's not really that negative, and because she's got other things supporting her in the rest of the chart, it sort of works as like a materialistic motivator for her. So Saturn in the fourth can work out to be a materialistic motivator also, but that's only when it's a bit negative and the rest of the chart is quite strong. Generally, what you get from Saturn in the fourth house is a non-materialistic motivator. So as you see, the interpretation of any planet in any house really depends an awful lot on the positivity or negativity of that planet. So now let's go over how you would figure that out. First of all, the most basic consideration is the sign dignity. I've recently published 3 or 4 videos on this exact topic. Saturn in the first house in Aries is not the same as Saturn in the first house in Libra, and it would be ridiculous to think that it is. It's because Saturn in Aries is in fall and Saturn in Libra is exalted. And there's this whole spectrum of dignity in between exaltation and fall. And if you want to know that in detail, check those videos to figure out how you calculate dignity. In addition to the sign dignity that a planet has in a house, you also want to think about how the house itself is either advantageous or deleterious to the planet's dignity. If the planet is a malefic or the sun or the nodes, then it is at an advantage if it's in houses 3, 6, 10, or 11, but it's in a disadvantage if it's in 1, 4, 5, or 9. And if it's at an advantage, you just give a bonus to its dignity. I give 25%. And if it's at a disadvantage, you subtract some of its dignity. I subtract 25%. If it's one of the other planets, the benefics, along with the moon or Mercury, then the advantageous or bonus houses are 1, 4, 5, 9, and 10. And the disadvantageous houses are 3 and 6. Finally, the third step is to consider the lordship of this planet. If the planet is the lord of certain houses, then it gets a bonus to its dignity. If it's the lord of other houses, then it might get a detriment. So the best house to be the lord of is the first, because the lord of the first wants to protect the whole chart because the whole chart belongs to it. Also, It's very positive to be the lord of a trine, the 5th to the 9th. And it's also somewhat positive to be the lord of the 4th or the 10th. It's disadvantageous, however, to be the lord of the 6th, 8th, or 12th. There's a loophole about this. If the lord of the 6th, 8th, or 12th is occupying the 6th, 8th, or 12th, then it's not a disadvantageous thing. It's an advantageous thing. And what you would subtract, you instead add to the dignity. So if it's confusing or you just want to see exactly how I do it, don't worry. You can do that. You can go to my website, victicara.com, click into the report section, and then you have an option to get either just the basic chart, or you can also get the subdivisions. So please consider doing that. And also, please, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you're thinking. Also, just you doing that helps YouTube spot this video and show it to other people. So I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much.